Right, so in the last couple of days, there's been a bit of a blow for Starmer's Labour in at least one of his stitch-up seats. It's arguably one of the better-known ones, though the framing of this story by some mainstream media sources would imply butter doesn't melt in Starmer's mouth. The dismissal of Faiza Shaheen as the Labour candidate for Chingford and Woodford Green, after she had continued to campaign for the party for 4 years, only to be ditched in the last-minute purge of potential candidates, absolutely sickened people in her constituency. The Labour membership there, and this was reinforced upon the imposition of a pro-Zionist right-wing candidate instead of the pro-Palestinian Shaheen that they had chosen. And this was exacerbated still further when a leaked recording of Shaheen's national executive interview came to light, where she was clearly dealing with an upset baby, scheduled at a time where childcare was unavailable to her, an interview conducted by 3 members of the NEC, 2 of whom had effectively awarded themselves safe seats in all of that going through. Shaheen has now chosen to quit Labour and run as an independent, and who can blame her after all the work she had put in for Labour? But crucially, nearly 50 other members of Chingford and Woodford Green Labour have followed her out of the door so they can campaign for her too. Right, so the question I have watching the shenanigans Starmer's Labour have got up to, for once under public and media scrutiny, to an extent at any rate, in Chingford and Woodford Green is one of off-the-scale desertion that we've witnessed here from Labour being repeated elsewhere. And what kind of an impact could that have then? Is it just a localised thing? Will it only be certain seats? Or is there real underlying problems on a scale that we've observed concerning Faiza Shaheen happening elsewhere? Because we've seen candidates being parachuted in all over the place, haven't we? Whether the seats are even winnable or not. The Labour candidate where I am in the far west of Cornwall, for example, is from Manchester. A seat Labour have never won down here, are not likely to win either. But even here, Starmer can't apparently let local people pick one of their own. So just how widespread is this controlled freakery that has happened? And to what extent are members either downing tools in effect and refusing to campaign, though remain in the party at a minimum, or at a maximum are quitting the party entirely, taking their experience and their campaigning time and effort elsewhere, as seen surrounding Faiza Shaheen and arguably Jeremy Corbyn at the moment as well. Now, I covered her disgusting treatment and replacement in another video the other week, but since then, Shaheen has gone on to quit Labour completely, a move referred to by some in the Labour right, of course, as shaking off the fleas when people go out the door, don't they? Which really shows how valued members and campaigners are these days under Starmer. Starmer and co have the donors now, though, don't they? So they don't care about the members, despite Labour's election campaign game always being one of conversations on doorsteps, boots on the ground, volunteers giving up their time and effort to get the vote out. And if Labour think these aren't needed anymore, well, that's going to be put to the test, as a lot of these people they think they don't need anymore are now going to be campaigning against them. And the results will be seen for what they are, and, well, if they lose Chingford after all of this, they will only have themselves to blame, since Shaheen was, according to polling, nailed on to win the seat for Labour. Yet Labour appear to prefer to risk losing the seat than have a soft left MP who happens to be pro-Palestinian within their ranks. Starmer is putting together a party of yes-men, where dissent is not tolerated, and in light of this, Shaheen's resignation letter didn't hold back, part of which reads, "I have campaigned for the party as its candidate since I was reselected in 2022, and previously at the 2019 general election, achieving the highest ever vote for Labour in my area. We would almost certainly have won on 4th of July. Instead, after a sham process initiated for spurious reasons, I learned by email that Labour had removed me as its candidate less than 6 weeks before the general election. I campaigned throughout my pregnancy, and as soon as I was signed off by the doctor, went out knocking doors 6 weeks after the birth of my son. Just 2 days after learning of my removal, Labour imposed a new candidate, someone not known or supported by most local members, with no links to our community. Since my reselection, I have faced a relentless campaign of unfair treatment, bullying and hostility that I have never before experienced in all my personal and professional life. I have been penalised for describing my experiences of Islamophobia and been dismayed at the hierarchy of racism within my own party. I have been prevented from speaking out on issues that really matter to me, including on public sector wages and Palestine. My removal shows the desires of local members of my community mean nothing to the people at the top of the party. I cannot, in all good conscience, continue to contribute to a party that seems to think so little of people like me and has moved so far away from my values. I will not beg and grovel to earn my place. I want to be treated as an equal and with the respect afforded to others." It's pretty damning stuff, actually, isn't it? And the Starmer still claims to have made his party less racist when actually his party weaponises it, even against ethnic minority candidates standing for his party, is obscene. And certainly I'm not the only person thinking so, as in the last couple of days, 48 of Shaheen's former constituency Labour Party have followed her out of the door. Now, we've seen and heard stories, and certainly I've made content covering various instances of it, of members leaving the Labour Party, of their councillors resigning, CLP, Constituency Labour Party executive officers walking out. But for a CLP to lose nearly 50 members all in one go, all for the same reason, to not just see them refuse to campaign, but to cut up their cards and walk out for good, and campaign for someone else, is a big deal. Especially since instead of now campaigning for you, they're going to campaign against you. Taken for granted, a candidate from outside the area who just happens to be from the right faction imposed on you, and you're expected to just carry on in Labour's name. It doesn't work like that. And these people now leaving to back Shaheen as an independent and get the word out that this is the case now, had plenty to say on the matter as they too issued a joint resignation letter, signed by them all. Here, we, the undersigned, are resigning as members of the Labour Party with immediate effect. Our democratically elected candidate for Chingford and Woodford Green, Faiza Shaheen, has been deselected in an appalling and unfair manner. Faiza was selected by the constituency members in a fair and open contest, accruing more votes than the other three candidates put together. The process of deselection overturned this election result and is anti-democratic. The deselection was carried out in a manner contrary to natural justice or any proper due process. It was inhumane and degrading and based on spurious grounds. What is particularly egregious is the fact that historic tweets when Faiza was not even a member of the party are being used against her, while over the past several weeks Labour has been happy to admit to its parliamentary party Conservative MPs who hold odious views that have been expressed repeatedly until very recently. We are at a loss to understand the timing and manner of this deselection. We can only assume that it is a cynical ploy aimed at removing a candidate of integrity at a time when the NEC can use its powers to impose a candidate without any due process. A candidate with no roots or connection to our community, and who has done none of the tireless work Faiza has carried out to bring that community together, building connections with local residents and businesses. This is all now being thrown away by the Labour Party. We can no longer stay in a party that treats people in this way. Not only has Faiza Shaheen been betrayed, but so have all those in the local Labour Party who voted for her candidature, and the ordinary residents of the Chingford and Woodford Green constituency. As a consequence, not only are we leaving the Labour Party, but we shall be doing all we can to support Faiza in her bid to become an independent MP for our constituency, the only realistic and moral alternative to Sir Ian Duncan Smith. They hit the nail on the head firmly and hammered it home once more just for good measure. And actually nothing does expose the factional aspect of Shaheen's deselection and so many others. When actual Tory MPs have been admitted to the Labour Party, no questions asked, whoever wanted to come in was more than welcome. That actual Tories, the worst of all Tories as we know, 14 years of the worst Tory government we've ever seen, the fact these actual Tories are more welcome than anyone on the left in what is supposed to be a left-leaning socialist party really does show how far Labour has fallen and how much of a Conservative party Keir Starmer has made it. It is not a Labour Party anymore because such people are not welcome in it. If you are voting Labour, you are voting Tory now. Shaheen deserves to give Starmer a bloody nose, and it could well be happening elsewhere as well. Not being highlighted as much, not getting quite the same media attention perhaps, where members in other constituencies around the country have walked away too, where Labour campaign support is down sufficiently to threaten their campaign odds, and whether or not this will be reflected in the general election result, we won't know until the night. Presumably, if, as we've seen in local elections, the Labour vote is down on predictions, or they fail to deliver in the same way that polling is still currently suggesting, because there's no way polling is taking any of this into account. Meanwhile, if Faiza Shaheen's story isn't one you've caught up with in the news, this video recommendation will catch you up on all of that, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.